Please. He's coming. Don't let him find me. I gasped it to a man I didn't know. Sharp suit, throat tattoos, eyes like murder. My ex's voice shattered the rain. Tara! The stranger's hand lifted once. Just once. Guns appeared. Bodies dropped. And I realized I traded one nightmare for something worse. Hey, before we dive into Tara's nightmare, if you're loving this story already, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button for K-Pop Tales Studios. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now, back to the storm.
The words ripped from Tara Daniels' throat as her bare feet slapped against rain-slicked pavement. Seoul's neon-drenched streets blurred around her. Pink, blue, electric white. Each storefront window reflecting her terror back at her in fractured glass. The rain didn't just fall. It attacked cold and merciless, soaking through her thin dress until it clung to her skin like a second layer of fear. Behind her, headlights cut through the fog. Low, predatory, Jinseek's black sedan crawling at her pace, letting her know he could catch her any time he wanted. Her lungs burned. Her vision tunneled. The financial district stretched endlessly ahead. All glass towers and empty luxury, no one to hear her scream. Busan, 3 months ago. Tara standing in front of a bathroom mirror. Sunglasses hiding the purple bloom under her left eye. Jinseek's voice through the door. Baby, I'm sorry. You know I didn't mean it. Please come out. Let me see you. The memory shattered as her foot caught on broken pavement. She stumbled, caught herself, kept running. 2 months ago, the sound of glass exploding against the wall beside her head. Jinseek's face twisted with rage she no longer recognized. You're mine, Tara. You don't get to leave me. You don't get to decide. The rain pounded harder. She couldn't feel her feet anymore. Couldn't feel anything except the animal instinct screaming at her to run. Run, run. Then she saw the alley. Pink neon bled across wet concrete, illuminating a figure that didn't belong to the chaos swallowing her whole. A man stood motionless in the rain, smoke curling from a cigarette between tattooed fingers. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of calm that comes from never needing to run. Tara didn't think. She just launched herself forward, her body colliding with his before her mind could warn her this was a different kind of danger. Please, she gasped, fingers clutching the lapels of his jacket. Rain streamed down her face. Mixing with tears, she didn't remember crying. He's coming. Please don't let him find me. Daehoon Kim's eyes, dark, assessing, impossibly steady, dropped to where her hands gripped him. Then slowly, deliberately, they lifted to her face. He didn't speak, didn't move, just studied her the way you study something broken, deciding if it's worth fixing. From the mouth of the alley, a voice shattered the rain's rhythm. Tara, you can't hide from me. Jinseek Lim, the man she'd spent 3 years loving. The man who'd turned love into a cage. Shadows materialized behind Daehoon. Men in dark coats, faces hidden, hands hovering near concealed weapons. One stepped forward, voice low. Who's she, boss? Daehoon's gaze never left Tara's face. She looked drowned and desperate, dress plastered to trembling limbs, eyes wide with the kind of fear that came from running for your life. She's lost, he said finally, his voice a quiet rumble that somehow cut through the storm. And I don't like what's chasing her. Jinseek rounded the corner, umbrella snapping in the wind. But when he saw Daehoon, really saw him, something in his expression flickered. Recognition masquerading as fury. You have something of mine, Kim, Jinseek spat. Give her back. Tara flinched. I'm not yours. She stole from me. Jinseek barked, taking a step forward. took money, my car keys. You don't know what she's done. Dae-hoon tilted his head. When he spoke, his tone was almost conversational. Funny. That's exactly what I call men who hit women. The alley went silent except for the hiss of rain. Then Dae-hoon's voice dropped. Calm, measured, lethal. Walk away. Now. Jun-seek's face twisted. You don't know who you're. He lunged forward. Dae-hoon sighed, the sound of a man profoundly bored by violence. His hand lifted slightly. Just a gesture. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, Dae-hoon's men moved like shadows given purpose. No gunfire. No drama. Just efficient, brutal silence. Jun-seek hit the wet pavement, his men scattered, and suddenly the predator looked very much like prey. Who the hell are you? Jun-seek gasped. Dae-hoon's expression didn't change. The man who just gave you a second chance at breathing. Don't waste it. Jun-seek scrambled backward, then ran. Actually ran, shoes splashing through puddles, the sound swallowed by the storm. Tara stood frozen, chest heaving. She stared up at Dae-hoon and realized she had no idea what she just stepped into. You didn't have to. I don't have to, Dae-hoon interrupted softly. He shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Only choose to. He turned toward the mouth of the alley, toward the waiting car with tinted windows. You can come with me, he said, quietly not looking back. Or take your chances out here. Tara's legs shook. Behind her, the empty alley. Ahead, a stranger who just dismantled her nightmare with nothing but a hand signal. She took a step forward, then another. When she climbed into his car, the leather interior smelled like expensive cologne and something darker. Control, the kind of power that didn't need to announce itself. As they pulled away, Tara caught her reflection in the window, soaked, terrified, wearing a stranger's warmth. And somewhere in Seoul's rain-washed streets, she just traded one prison for another. She just didn't know it yet. If you're hooked on Tara and Dae-hoon's story, subscribe to K-Pop Tale Studios right now and drop a comment telling me what time you're watching this. Are you team Run Girl Run or team Dae-hoon's protection? Let me know below because what happens next, nobody's ready for. In saving her, he had just invited chaos into his world, and neither of them knew it yet. The elevator didn't make a sound as it climbed. Tara watched the numbers tick upward. 35, 40, 43. Each floor pulling her further from the chaos below and deeper into something she couldn't name. Dae-hoon stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, but his eyes were fixed on his phone. Typing. Always typing. His thumbs moved across the screen with the same precision he'd used to signal his men in the alley. The doors opened with a whisper. His penthouse stretched before her like something from a magazine she'd never afford to buy. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Seoul's glittering skyline, the city alive and pulsing with neon and movement. But inside these walls, everything was silence. Marble floors, leather furniture arranged with geometric precision, white walls interrupted only by black and white photography of cities she didn't recognize. No warmth, no sound, just control made visible. Sit, Dae-hoon said, gesturing to the pristine white sofa. Not a command, not quite a request. Something in between that made her legs move before her brain agreed. He disappeared down a hallway, returning moments later with a towel and a cup of tea. Both were placed before her with movements so exact they felt rehearsed. The towel was folded into a perfect rectangle. The tea sat centered on a black coaster. "Thank you," Tara whispered, wrapping her hands around the cup's warmth. She was shaking, she realized. Had been shaking since the alley. Dae-hoon stood by the window, his silhouette dark against Seoul's electric glow. He'd removed his tie, unbuttoned the top of his shirt. The tattoos on his throat extended further down, she could see now. Serpents, maybe. Or dragons. Something that looked like it had meaning beyond decoration. "You're safe here," he said without turning. Safe. The word felt foreign in a space this sterile, this controlled. Dae-hoon's fingers twitched against the glass. He didn't understand why he'd brought her here. His penthouse was sacred space, walls he'd built to keep the world's chaos at a distance. And yet, he'd just invited the messiest thing imaginable through his door. A terrified woman with tears still drying on her face and rain pooling beneath her bare feet on his marble floor. She's a problem. She's a complication. His mind supplied the image before he could stop it. His sister, Mina, 12 years ago, standing in their childhood kitchen with that same desperate look in her eyes. "Appa, please. You have to believe me. He's hurting me. No one believes me, but you have to." Dae-hoon's jaw tightened. He'd been 17. Stupid. Too young to understand that monsters didn't always look like monsters. By the time he'd figured it out, Mina was gone. Behind him, the woman, Tara, Jin-seek had called her, shifted on the sofa. Her cup clinked softly against the coaster. Even her breathing sounded too loud in this tomb of silence he'd built. Keep her alive. Find out what Lim wants. Remove the threat. Simple. Nothing about her felt simple. Tara's eyes tracked the room, cataloging details her teacher's brain couldn't help but notice. Everything was expensive. Everything was positioned. Even the books on the shelf were organized by height, their spines creating a perfect gradient from tall to short. Then she saw it, on his desk, illuminated by a single lamp, a wooden case, polished, ornate, and unmistakably designed to hold weapons. Her hands went cold around the teacup. Dae-hoon's phone buzzed. He answered in Korean, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The words were clipped, weighted with meaning she couldn't parse, but she caught names, locations, something that sounded like coordinates. When he ended the call, she asked quietly, "Who are you really?" He turned from the window, those dark eyes finding hers across the sterile expanse. "Someone your ex should have never crossed." That's not an answer. It's the only one you need tonight. The TV on the wall flickered to life. Dae-hoon must have pressed something because she hadn't seen him move. Korean news filled the screen. Her language skills were basic, but she caught enough. Police investigation, Black Serpent Syndicate, organized crime connections. Her stomach dropped. "Turn it off," Dae-hoon said to someone she couldn't see. A voice from another room replied, and the screen went dark. Tara set down her tea before she could drop it. You're with the mafia." "We don't call it that in Korea." He moved to a cabinet, poured amber liquid into a crystal glass, but close enough. "Oh my God." Her voice came out strangled. "Oh my God, I asked a mob boss to save me. And I did." He took a sip, his expression unreadable. "You're welcome. This is insane. I need to leave. I need to." "Go where?" His question cut through her rising panic. "Back to your apartment where Lim knows the address? To the police he probably has in his pocket? Where exactly do you think you're safe, Tara?" Hearing her name from his lips sent something cold down her spine. "I don't even know you." "You know enough. You know I stopped him. You know you're breathing because I chose to let you breathe." He set down his glass with a soft click. "That's more than most people get to know about me." Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt liquid in this place. Dae-hoon made more calls, each one conducted in that same low, lethal tone. Tara sat on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket someone had brought her, and watched the rain streak down the floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside, Seoul pulsed with life. Inside, she existed in a mausoleum of marble and silence. Around midnight, she heard voices from the hallway. Dae-hoon speaking with someone. She crept closer, pressing herself against the wall. "Find out who Lim answers to," Dae-hoon said quietly. Every word weighted like a death sentence. "I don't like unfinished business." "Boss, he's small time. Corrupt cop with a bad habit. Nothing worth." He put his hands on her. The temperature in Dae-hoon's voice dropped below freezing. "That makes him my business. I want to know who he works for, who protects him, and how much it will cost to make him disappear." Silence. Then, understood. Tara's breath caught in her throat. This man didn't save people. He eliminated problems. Permanently. She backed away from the wall, her mind racing. Jin-seek was violent, dangerous, cruel. But he was still human, still breathing. And she just handed him to someone who talked about making people disappear, like it was a Tuesday afternoon errand. Dae-hoon appeared in the doorway, catching her mid-retreat. His eyes narrowed slightly. "You should be sleeping." "I can't." Her voice shook. "What are you going to do to him?" "Nothing you need to think about. You're going to kill him." Dae-hoon's expression didn't change. "I'm going to make sure he never touches you again. How I do that is my concern, not yours." The rain hammered against the windows. Seoul glittered beyond the glass, beautiful and oblivious. For the first time in her life, Tara wasn't sure if safety felt better than fear. 3 days passed in Dae-hoon's penthouse, and Tara learned that silence could be louder than screaming. She'd been given a guest room, all white linens and minimalist furniture, with a view of Seoul that made her feel like she was floating above the world. But floating wasn't freedom. It was just a different kind of falling. Dae-hoon gave her space. Too much space. He'd disappear for hours, returning with the smell of smoke and something darker, clinging to his clothes. But every morning, she'd find a tray outside her door. Warm rice, soup, tea that was always the perfect temperature. No note. No explanation, just sustenance delivered with the same precision he applied to everything else. She saw him mostly in fragments. The ruthless boss who stood in his office, speaking in Korean so cold it could frost glass, his men flinching at single words. The way he'd gesture once, and grown men would scatter like shadows fleeing light. But also, the quiet man who stood at the window at 3 a.m., drink in hand, staring at nothing. The way his jaw tightened when news reports mentioned domestic violence. How he'd started keeping the thermostat 3 degrees warmer after her first night when she couldn't stop shivering. On the 4th night, she found him in the living room, the city lights painting him in shades of blue and gold. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning. "Haven't been able to sleep in 3 years." Tara wrapped her arms around herself. The silk robe he'd provided felt too expensive against her skin. Not really. "Sit." She did, leaving a full cushion of distance between them on the sofa. Silence stretched. Then, "How long did he hit you?" The question landed like a punch. Tara's throat tightened. 2 years. Maybe longer. I stopped counting the apologies. "Why'd you stay?" "Because he said he loved me." Her laugh came out broken. "Because I thought love was supposed to hurt sometimes. Because I was alone in a foreign country and he made me feel less alone. Until he made me feel like nothing." Dae-hoon's fingers tightened around his glass. "My sister believed a man who said he loved her too. He killed her for trying to leave." The confession hung between them like something fragile. "I'm sorry," Tara whispered. "Don't be. Be alive. That's the better revenge." She wanted to ask more about his sister, about the shadows in his eyes, but his phone buzzed, always buzzing, always pulling him back into whatever dark world he commanded. He stood, straightening his shirt. Try to sleep. Tomorrow might be loud. What happens tomorrow? But he was already gone, swallowed by the hallway's darkness. The next afternoon, Tara was pretending to read when voices drifted from Daehoon's office. His door was cracked, unusual. He never left doors open. She shouldn't have moved closer, shouldn't have pressed herself against the wall to listen. But she did. He's still looking for her. A man's voice, rough with concern. Lim paid off half the police in Gangnam. He's telling everyone she stole from him. He wants her dead, boss. Silence. Then Daehoon's voice, cold and final as a grave closing. Then make sure he disappears. Permanently. Do I stutter? Tara's hand flew to her mouth, stifling the gasp trying to escape. Her back hit the wall, her legs suddenly unable to hold her weight. He's going to kill him. He's actually going to kill Jinsik. The rational part of her brain whispered that Jinsik deserved it, that he'd tried to kill her, that he'd made her life a living hell for years. But the other part, the part that still remembered loving him, the part that was raised to believe in law and justice and second chances, that part was screaming. She stumbled back to the guest room, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. The walls felt closer. The city below looked more like a prison than a view. Hours later, Daehoon found her sitting by the window, knees pulled to her chest. You heard, he said. Not a question. You're going to kill him. Her voice was hollow. Aren't you? He moved to the window beside her, hands in his pockets, his reflection ghostly in the glass. For a long moment, he didn't answer, just stared out its soul like it was a chessboard and he was calculating his next move. I don't kill for pleasure, he finally said, his voice quieter than she'd ever heard it. I kill for peace. That's not peace. That's murder. Is it? He turned to face her, those dark eyes holding hers captive. When a dog has rabies, you put it down, not because you enjoy it, because it's the only way to stop it from hurting others. Jinsik's not a dog. He's a person. He's a monster wearing a person's face. Daehoon's jaw tightened. And monsters don't stop, Tara. They don't reform. They don't suddenly wake up one day and decide to be better. They keep destroying everything they touch until someone stops them. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Something raw flashed across his features. Because I watched my sister give her monster 12 chances, 12 apologies, 12 promises that this time would be different. You know what the 13th time was? Her funeral. Tara's chest constricted. I could let him live, Daehoon continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I could tell my men to back off. Let the police handle it, the same police he's paying. Let the courts deal with it, the same system that will give him a slap on the wrist and maybe 6 months if you're lucky. And then what? He comes for you again, because men like him always do. So your solution is to become the monster instead. My solution is to make sure you get to wake up tomorrow without checking over your shoulder. He turned back to the window. You can hate me for that if you want. Most people do. Tara stood, her legs shaking. I don't want his blood on my hands. It won't be on your hands. His reflection met hers in the glass. It'll be on mine, where it always is. The rain started again, soft patters against the penthouse windows. Seoul glittered on, beautiful and indifferent to the girl who'd escaped one nightmare only to wake up inside another. When she whispered, tomorrow night, you won't see it, won't hear it. One day he'll just stop existing, and you'll be free. Free. The word tasted like ashes. Tara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the room's warmth. Jinseek had hunted her with rage, wild, unpredictable, explosive. But Daehoon hunted with reason, with precision, with the kind of cold calculation that didn't need anger to justify violence. Her ex had been a storm she could see coming. Daehoon was the calm before the earth opened up and swallowed you whole. And somehow, that made him infinitely more terrifying. If you can't stand men like Jinseek, who think they own women, hit subscribe to K-Pop Tales Studios right now. Comment, everyone deserves safety, if you believe Tara deserves to live without fear. Only abusers and their enablers won't subscribe. Don't be one of them. Morning light spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows like an interrogation lamp, harsh and unforgiving. Tara sat at the breakfast bar, hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched, staring at nothing. The TV murmured in the background, Korean morning news that she'd stopped trying to understand days ago. But then she heard a name that made her blood freeze. Jinseek Lim. Her head snapped toward the screen. A reporter stood beside the Han River, yellow police tape fluttering behind her. The camera panned to show a black sedan being pulled from the water, river weeds clinging to its frame like funeral decorations. The reporter's voice remained professional, detached, as she described the discovery. Police confirmed the body of Jinseek Lim, 34, was found inside the vehicle. Authorities are investigating, but preliminary reports suggest the car went off the bridge late last night. No witnesses have come forward. The teacup slipped from Tara's hands. It shattered against the marble floor, porcelain and liquid exploding in every direction. But she didn't hear it, didn't feel the hot tea splashing against her legs. Just stared at the screen as they showed a photo of Jinseek, his police ID picture. That same smile he'd used the first time they met. Dead. He was dead. You're up early. Daehoon's voice came from his office doorway. He looked the same as always. Pressed shirt, perfect hair, expression carved from stone. Like he hadn't just orchestrated a murder while she slept 20 feet away. You killed him. The words came out strangled. You actually killed him. Daehoon glanced at the TV, then back at her. His face betrayed nothing. I told you I would. I thought, her voice cracked. I thought you were just trying to scare me, to make me understand how serious this was. I didn't think you'd actually. What did you think make him disappear meant? He moved closer, glass crunching under his shoes. That I'd send him on vacation. You said you'd protect me. Tears burned her eyes. Not murder him. I did protect you. His voice remained flat, clinical. He was hunting you. Now he's not. Problem solved. He was a person. He was a monster. You don't get to decide that. Tara's hands shook, rage and horror twisting inside her chest. You don't get to play God. Someone has to. Daehoon's jaw tightened, the first crack in his armor. The police you wanted to run to? He bought them. The courts you believe in? They would have given him a restraining order and sent you both home. And then what? You think a piece of paper would have stopped him from killing you. So your answer is murder. My answer is permanence. He stepped closer, and for the first time, something dangerous flickered in his eyes. You want to pretend there's a better way? Fine. But don't stand in my house, safe and breathing, and lecture me about morality. Monsters don't stop unless someone stops them. Then what does that make you? The question came out as a whisper. What does that make you, Daehoon? His expression went cold, empty, efficient. The word hung between them like a death sentence. Tara stumbled backward, her mind reeling. The penthouse suddenly felt smaller, walls closing in, the beautiful view just another gilded cage. She looked at the man who'd saved her life and saw something that terrified her more than Jinseek ever had. Jinseek's violence had been hot, explosive, visible. Daehoon's was ice, calculated, invisible until it was too late. I need to leave. She moved toward the guest room, her legs barely supporting her weight. Where will you go? Anywhere that isn't here. She threw her few belongings into the bag someone had provided. Clothes that weren't hers, toiletry she hadn't asked for, all of it feeling like evidence of her complicity. Her hands shook as she zipped it closed. Daehoon stood in the doorway watching, not stopping her, not helping her, just watching with those dark, unreadable eyes. I can't stay here, she said again, needing him to understand, needing herself to understand. I can't sleep under the same roof as someone who saved your life, who killed for it. The words exploded from her chest. You didn't save me, Daehoon. You erased him, like he was nothing, like his life meant nothing. His life meant pain. Daehoon's voice dropped to something almost gentle. For you, for however many women came before you, for whoever would have come after, I ended that pain, permanently, by becoming the thing you claim to hate. Something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe, or recognition, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that same carved stone calm. The door's unlocked, he said quietly. You're free to go. Tara grabbed her bag and pushed past him, her shoulder brushing his. She felt him tense, but he didn't stop her, didn't grab her, didn't do anything but stand there as she walked toward the elevator. Her finger hovered over the button. Tara. She didn't turn around. If you leave, Daehoon said, his voice carrying across the marble expanse, don't run into the rain. It remembers everyone who bleeds. The word sent ice down her spine. Not a threat, a warning, or maybe both. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside, and as they closed, she caught one last glimpse of him, standing alone in his perfect, sterile penthouse, surrounded by silence and glass and the ghost of a man he'd erased from existence. The lobby attendant called her a taxi. She climbed in and gave an address she barely remembered, a hostel in Hongdae where she'd stayed when she first arrived in Seoul, back when Korea felt like an adventure instead of a nightmare. Rain started as they pulled away from the building. Soft at first, then harder. The city blurred beyond the windows, neon bleeding into gray. Tara pressed her forehead against the cold glass and tried to feel free. But freedom had never felt so lonely, or so watched. The hostel didn't have her old room available. The clerk apologized in broken English, offered her a different floor, a smaller window. Tara took it without argument. What did it matter? For walls were 4 walls, and none of them would feel like safety anymore. She lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of staring at water-stained ceiling tiles, listening to backpackers laugh in the hallway, feeling Daehoon's coat, still draped around her shoulders because she'd forgotten to leave it behind, smell like expensive cologne and something darker, something that felt dangerously like protection. At midnight, she left. The rain had returned because of course it had. Seoul streets glistened under neon, beautiful and treacherous. Tara walked without direction, letting her feet choose the path while her mind circled the same impossible thoughts. Jinseek is dead. Daehoon killed him. I'm free. I'm not free. I'm alive because someone died. She ended up at a bus stop, one of those glass shelters that provided the illusion of protection while keeping you fully visible to the world. The last bus had run hours ago. She sat on the cold bench anyway, pulled Daehoon's coat tighter, and watched the rain turn Seoul into a watercolor painting. This was supposed to feel like freedom. Instead, it felt like she'd traded one cage for another, then walked out of both only to discover she'd forgotten how to exist without bars. Jin-seek had controlled her with rage, with fists and apologies, and the constant threat of violence. But at least she'd understood that prison, had known its dimensions, could map its walls. Daehoon's cage had been different, quieter, made of marble and silence and a protection so absolute it felt like ownership. But he'd let her walk away, had stood there and watched her leave without lifting a hand to stop her. And somehow that made it worse, because now she was sitting in the rain, completely free, and all she could think about was the warmth of his penthouse, the food that appeared outside her door, the way he'd looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, like she was something fragile he didn't know how to hold without breaking. "You're insane," she told herself. "He's a murderer. He killed someone for you. That's not love. That's obsession. You shouldn't be out here." Tara's head snapped up. Daehoon stood in the rain, completely soaked. No umbrella, no coat, just him in a white shirt that clung to his frame, dark hair plastered to his forehead, looking like some tragic figure from a film she'd never wanted to star in. "How did you find me?" Her voice came out hoarse. "I always know where you are." He took a step closer, rain streaming down his face. That was the point. She stood, anger flaring. "You've been tracking me, protecting you. You killed him." The words exploded from her chest. "You actually killed Jin-seek." Yes. No hesitation. No excuse. Just the truth, stark and unforgiving. Tara's voice broke. "You're a monster." Daehoon's jaw tightened, something cracking behind his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I know." The rain pounded harder, like the sky was trying to wash them both clean and failing. He took another step closer, closing the distance between them until she could see the exhaustion carved into his features. The weight of whatever he'd done, not just to Jin-seek, but to countless others over however many years he'd been playing God with people's lives. "I don't know how to be good, Tara." His voice trembled for the first time since she'd met him. "I only know how to protect, how to eliminate threats before they eliminate the people. He stopped, swallowed hard. "But you made me wish I wasn't what I am. Made me wish I could be the kind of man who saves people without destroying others." He extended his hand. Not a command, not a demand, just an offering. Palm up, rain pooling in the center. "I can't promise you peace," he said quietly. "Can't promise you normal or safe or anything that looks like the life you probably deserve. But I can promise you no one will ever hurt you again. Not him. Not anyone. Ever." Tara stared at his hand, at the tattoos wrapping around his wrist. Serpents eating their own tails, endless cycles of violence and protection. At the scars, she could see now that his shirt was soaked transparent. She looked at his eyes and saw something that terrified her more than his calm ever had. Truth. Raw, unfiltered truth. He was exactly what he claimed to be, a monster who'd learned to channel his violence into something that looked like salvation. And he was offering her a choice, knowing she might choose to walk away, knowing it would destroy something in him if she did. Tara's hand moved before her mind approved. Her fingers slipped into his, and his closed around them immediately. Gentle, careful, like he was holding something precious he'd already broken once and couldn't bear to break again. He pulled her into his arms, and she let him, let herself collapse against his chest as the rain fell around them, like absolution neither of them deserved. "I'm still angry," she whispered against his shirt. "I know. I don't know if I can forgive what you did. I don't expect you to. But I don't want to run anymore." His arms tightened around her. "Then don't." The next morning, they stood together on his penthouse balcony. Seoul stretched below them, millions of lives playing out in glass towers and neon streets, all of them unaware that somewhere above, a woman who'd escaped one nightmare was learning to live inside another. Tara's hands gripped the railing, knuckles white. Dae-hoon stood beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. Not possessive, not controlling, just there, steady and solid and terrifyingly permanent. "What happens now?" she asked. "Whatever you want. I want to not feel like I'm drowning." "Then we learn to swim." She looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd killed for her, who'd given her freedom and then watched her choose to come back, who was exactly as broken as she was, just better at hiding the cracks. She had escaped one monster and chosen another, but maybe this time she'd found the one who could teach her how to survive the dark. The rain had stopped. Seoul glittered in morning light, beautiful and brutal and alive. And for the first time in 3 years, Tara felt like she might learn to be alive too. If you can't stand men who think violence equals love, hit subscribe to K-Pop Tales Studios. Comment, "Love should never hurt," if you believe Tara deserves a chance at real safety, not another prison. Only abusers and their defenders won't subscribe. Which side are you on?